I'm Chance Dorland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. Recently, a civil rights group marched around the historic Bexar County Courthouse, chanting, "What do we want? Bail reform. When do we want it? Now." And I'm joined by San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala to learn more about this event. Great to have you back here on the program, Liz, just like every week. Let's begin with the very simple topic. What's going on with bail reform in Bexar County?
Yes, Chance. As you said, bail reforms are going on all across the nation and, frankly, probably worldwide too. And, locally, the December death of Janice Dotson Stevens caught the attention of many across the nation, including U.S. Senator Kamala Harris of California. She's a Democrat who just announced she's running for president. And she read the news that Dotson Stevens, who was a grandmother with mental illness, died in the Bexar County Jail after being incarcerated for 5 months on a criminal trespass charge. Her bail was just $300. So that example and others that have occurred locally have started, Bexar County riding this wave as Dallas County and Harris County, where the seat is in Houston, were sued because their systems were said to be unconstitutional because they created a situation called, wealth-based detention. So basically, activists say if you have money, you can post bail. But if you don't, you either stay in jail or you take a plea, ensuring that you now have a criminal record, which then makes it hard to find a job or a place to live.
So that's what's happening locally, and then you also touched on national and even internationally for where bail is at the moment. I guess a very simple question I have: what's the difference between bail and bail bond?
Well, Chance, in Texas, the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure dictates rules on setting bail amounts, and that's statute defines bail as the security given by the accused that he will appear and answer before the proper court the accusation brought against him, and includes a bail bond or personal bond. Now, a bail bond, according to the statute, is a written undertaking entered into by the defendant and the defendant's sureties for the appearance of the principal before a court or magistrate to answer a criminal accusation.
So then bail bond, that's where the bounty hunter comes in, right? If you don't appear.
Right. I would assume that is what that's all about. I mean, ideally I think it's still set up where you put 10% of your bond down, and that'll get you out on bond, and it's supposed to assure that you show back up in court. However, there are times that people will they'll jump they'll say things like so and so jump bail, or they're out and they are violating what they agreed to in court.
So we've covered a lot of the bases so far. Let's get into this demonstration that you actually were able to experience firsthand yourself at the Bexar County Courthouse. What went on?
Well, it was, thank goodness, it was a good day on Thursday. It was a little windy, but with the Lady Justice fountain in the background, about 30 to 35 people marched in front of and around the historic Bexar County Courthouse. And they held white crosses with the names of just under about a dozen people that organizers said actually had died pre-trial while in the Bexar County Jail over the past 3 years. some of these demonstrators were also wearing orange jumpsuits, with inmate written on them. And the particular group that was involved is the Texas Organizing Project. So they all had their T-shirts with the acronym TOP on it for Texas Organizing Project. So Laquita Garcia, who's the campaign coordinator for Texas Organizing Project's Right to Justice arm, delivered 25,000 signatures on behalf of the civil rights group Color of Change. And of those, 2,573 were from Bexar County residents. 14,328 were from people around Texas that this organization has approached. And the rest came from cities across the nation, organizers said, basically where they have highlighted their cause for awareness on the bail reform issue.
And so, not just bail reform, they're also trying to bring awareness to something else specifically, correct?
Yes. They say that people of color in America are disproportionately impacted by cash bail because they cannot afford or do not have the means to pay bail. They said that many people end up staying incarcerated or entering into plea agreements, which means they now have criminal records simply because they don't have the money to get out. And I spoke to one of the organizers, a man by the name of Robert Phillips. He told me he faced it firsthand when he was arrested in Bexar County on a misdemeanor nonviolent charge and stayed in jail because he couldn't afford his bail. He said it hurt his family because he was not able to work while he was incarcerated. So the group basically says ending cash bail would put everyone, those with means to pay and those without, on a more equal footing.
As you've already mentioned, Elizabeth, this is something that's being talked about in Bexar County, other parts of Texas, other parts of the country, and even internationally. Has Bexar County addressed this specifically yet?
Yes, they have, actually. Bexar County judges on, something that our county judge, Nelson Wolf, had put together. The Bexar County judges, the ones who cover misdemeanors, which are our county court at law judges, recently rejected and actually questioned the legality of a reform plan that recently was enacted in Houston, which again is the seat of Harris County, after they were sued. And that plan calls for the vast majority of people charged with misdemeanors to qualify for release on no cash bonds. Now, the system in Harris County that Harris County worked under previously was declared unconstitutional for creating what I mentioned earlier as, a wealth-based detention. So, Bexar County's misdemeanor judges argue the Harris County plan might actually defy state law and that they don't really have the authority to make that call. People on the other side of this issue basically say, no, judges actually have the authority to do that. And I actually spoke to a man Thursday, at the demonstration, who said that, a judge necessarily isn't supposed to be a neutral party. They're supposed to advocate. So, that kind of brings into, question kind of, there's two different sides. I mean, judges are supposed to not have an opinion and be impartial. And I've had many have told me that they're there to listen to both sides and, rule according to the law. So county officials, again, say bail reform is a legislative issue and is something that needs to be settled by the Texas legislature. And currently there are bills being considered to address bail reforms across the state that are going on in Austin. So, the misdemeanor judges, County Judge Wolf and District Attorney Joe Gonzalez, have all said to the Express News that they are exploring what they can do to ease this issue of people who are charged with misdemeanors and don't necessarily pose a risk to the community, to utilize options like personal recognizance bonds, which allow defendants to be released if they promise to appear at their next court date without actually posting a cash bond. And, that and other options are being explored, officials, say. So, to answer that question, Bexar County is currently trying to address it, but not really quite, done with it yet as they await to see what happens in Austin.
Few moments left on today's episode, Elizabeth, so I'll give you a chance for final thoughts. I also just wanted to ask you specifically before we say goodbye. So this idea of like a personal recognizance bond, being able to be let out and then being asked, obviously, to reappear at a certain time. That's one idea, and I think you mentioned for only certain types of offenses. But the idea of getting rid of cash bond in general, is there a bigger idea of what that would be replaced, or are these people who were chanting at the Bexar County Courthouse, or other people who say that the bail system needs to be reallocated or redone? Is there an idea that they have to replace it, or is it really just for certain types of accusations that they're saying that people shouldn't have to have money in order to not be in jail?
Well, right now, Chance, the group that was demonstrating was talking about misdemeanors. You're talking about anything that is, usually the way misdemeanor judges have explained it to me, and I cover a lot of trials on the criminal side. So I'm really not in the county courts at law very much, specifically because, I'm always trying to chase, a high profile case. But the times that I have spent in misdemeanor courts, that's basically where it all begins. You do something that is against the law, and one of the things they're talking about right now across the country is making certain things like possession of small amounts of marijuana, to make that a misdemeanor offense, punishable by maybe just giving somebody a ticket. They're talking about those types of crimes where it's like a first time, or it's a nonviolent type of offense, a misdemeanor, not a felony. And I've seen it actually on the criminal side, that when I sit in on criminal court dockets, there's a lot of people who will appear, and even when you look at the court dockets, they've been in jail for several days, sometimes 2 months at a time or something like that, they just don't have the means to put the money down for bail. And so for this particular issue, we're talking about misdemeanors, and the sad thing about it, when we started talking about this on the podcast, we were talking about the grandmother who was in the Bexar County jail. Again, her bail was just $300, and she was incarcerated for 5 months on a criminal trespass charge. And for a $300 bail, going on the 10% mark, which I've heard people say, gosh, nobody, she was just basically left in jail. There was nobody to post anything for her. That is obviously an extreme case. But when you talk about maybe, somebody who, made their first time mistake, and they've got a misdemeanor, but yet, they're the chief breadwinner in their family, and they don't have, the money to put down for bail. Say it's, you're being held on like $10,000 and you've got to put down at least $1,000, you know, that for many people, the demonstrators said could be a life-changing issue because, again, if you don't have the money, you know, you'll take a plea or you'll stay in jail, and then you have a criminal record, and you know, you apply for a job. What's the first thing they ask? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Even when you try to apply, you know, for a place to live, they will ask you if you have ever been convicted of a crime or that sort of thing. So, you know, listening to them passionately on the grounds in front of the courthouse, you know, they are gathering signatures and they're not going away, and they have vowed that people who make these decisions were put in place by the voters. So they're going to make as much noise as they can so that they can implement change and be able to vote accordingly, if you will, one demonstrator told me today.
And thank you to San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala for joining me for today's episode of The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Dorland.